Okay, good morning and welcome everyone to the Business First Stage, which is presented by IFT's Food Technology Magazine and our Omnivore podcast. It's great to see you all here this morning. My name is Bill McDowell. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Food Technology and the Vice President of Content Strategy here at IFT. At this morning's session, Harnessing Mushroom Nutrients for Longevity, Innovations in Food and Beverage, we're going to learn about a key ingredient found in mushrooms, L-ergothioneine, that very well could be the next longevity vitamin. Here to tell us more about the nutrient's potential to enhance lifespan and reduce neurological disease incidence are Dr. May-Zhang, Vice President of Science and Innovation at Blue California, and Dr. Robert Beelman, Professor Emeritus of Food Science and Director of the Center for Plant and Mushroom Foods for Health at Penn State University. They'll be sharing some cutting-edge research about this promising ingredient, including a first look at clinical trial outcomes for the project ErgoActive Ergothioneine. Be aware, we will build in some time for Q&A at the end, so hold your questions until the end. Yeah. And now I'm delighted to introduce Linda May-Zhang and Robert Beelman. Linda and Robert, stage is yours.
Thank you, Bill, for the kind introduction. Blue California is very excited to be back at IFT this year, and I am personally excited to be back on the Business First stage. This is my third year in a row being up here, but this year is very special because I'm joined with a guest speaker, Professor Beelman, who is a long-term expert in mushroom foods for human health. So we have a lot in common, including the topic we're going to be talking about today. So Bob, it is great to share the stage with you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
So I always start my IFT talks with a personal photo. And this year, I am showing my father on the screen with my two kids, his grandkids. You could tell from his photo that he is having the grandest time of his life with his grandkids. He's also been happily retired for a couple years. And I am just grateful that he is able to live up to this age and hopefully decades more with no chronic diseases. So when we think about longevity, we're really thinking about health span. We have made great strides in terms of improving human lifespan compared to the previous decades, but health span is something that we have to think about. So you probably have already heard of the statistic that by 2050, the global population over 60 years of age will double to 2 billion people, and over 80 will triple to 459 million. Also, over 60% of American adults have at least one chronic disease, if not more. So 2050, that's in 25 years, I will be part of this demographic. I will be retired by then. Hopefully, I will look like him, and I will not be suffering from any chronic diseases. So this is something that we have to think about. We're all consumers. We're also all players in food technology. So it is our wish to make the food supply, the foods that we eat, more nutritious and really cater to better quality of life, especially in those later years. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about today's topic. So just a brief introduction to our company, Blue California. We help brands help consumers increase quality of life through innovative ingredient development and more. So Blue California has been in the health and wellness space for over 30 years. We've mainly been in the nutraceutical space, beginning in botanical extracts, but in the past 8 to 10 years, we have specialized in making bio-based molecules found in nature through biotechnology, namely precision fermentation. And we have a portfolio of specialty ingredients. In the past couple years, we've also expanded our capabilities to other capabilities such as microencapsulation that specializes in novel delivery systems, increasing nutrient potency, bioavailability, masking flavors, etc. We also have a division called Sensogen that specializes in bio-based taste, smell, and beauty solutions. And we have a sister company named Sweegen that specializes in sugar reduction, natural taste optimization. And so together we're driving holistic solutions for human health through health ingredients, taste and smell, and sugar reduction. Okay, so now let's talk about the topic, mushrooms. That's why we're here. I'm assuming the audience all loves mushrooms. So mushrooms continue to be a trending food ingredient and food. And you can see the headlines here from 2024 that mushrooms are considered the it food. Here you can see an Instacart survey that over 58% of Americans now are more likely to consume mushroom-based supplements and also eat more mushrooms to better their brain and immune health. And you could also see here that even Michelin chefs are prioritizing mushrooms as an ingredient in their culinary creation. So this makes mushrooms a very positive trend. So mushrooms have been around for millennia, used for their medicinal purposes and health benefits. We're happy to see that there's clinical trials now to substantiate the health benefits of mushroom-based products. They're a nutrient-dense, low-calorie source of fibers like the beta-glucans. That's good for immune health. They're a source of vitamins and minerals, source of unique bioactives. But what really sets mushrooms apart is the richness for the longevity vitamin ergothioneine. So that's what we're going to be talking about mainly today. So I'm joined with Dr. Robert Beelman, who is a longtime expert in mushroom foods, but particularly ergothioneine. He's been researching this topic for over 20 years, and so I'm going to let him take the stage to talk more about this fascinating longevity vitamin.
All right, good. So ergothioneine was first discovered in 1909 by a gentleman that was studying the ergot fungus on rye grains, and it was a disease. And in investigating that, he discovered that there's amino acid ergothioneine, but nothing much was done about it until about the 1950s, when some scientists discovered that it was found in very high concentrations in the blood of animals, and then some work on humans as well. And they traced it back to the food supply. In the first case, it was oats. It was like a sheep that was eating it, and they found it in high concentrations in there. So it is an amino acid, but not one you would normally find in protein. It's colorless, odorless, and water soluble. And the other wonderful thing about it is it's very stable. If you look at the structure here of ergothioneine, at physiological pH, it's found in the thione form rather than the thiol, which is very easily auto-oxidized. But in the thione form, it's very stable. So it makes it an excellent potential nutrient to be in the food supply because it survives processing and whatever. So everything really began to get interesting in 2005 when a gentleman in Germany discovered that all mammals make a very highly specific transport protein that immediately pulls it out of food into the red blood cells, and then it's distributed around the body, and it concentrates in the tissues that are under the most oxidative stress. Next slide. So we first discovered that it was in mushrooms because that's what I was working with at the time. The reason being it's produced by almost all fungi, as far as we know in nature, a few bacteria and blue-green algae. So it has to be found in the diet to be able to obtain it. So we looked at various foods, and if you look at the slide there, for example, oats was one of the primary sources when we first did our work, that was one of considered the best source of ergothioneine. But as people went on working, we found that it's found in other foods, and especially in mushrooms, very high concentrations. And the amount that's in king oyster there, actually we found other mushrooms that have like 3 or 4 times that much. The other interesting thing is it is found in a fermented product, tempeh, and other mold-fermented foods, because again, the fungi are producing it. So it's found in very high concentrations in mold-fermented foods as well. Well, a number of years ago, there was a study came out. It was a group in France that estimated how much ergothioneine is consumed in 5 countries. And I was able to take their data and convert it to what it would be for the typical human in milligrams per day. And this is the data that came out of it. And unfortunately, the US had the lowest, a little over 1 milligram a day, and the Italians had about 4.6. And a lot of this was due to mushroom consumption, but other things as well. But when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is really profound. I wonder if it's related to chronic diseases or longevity. So I made these plots. This one is life expectancy, and you see the various countries listed there and the estimated ergo consumption. And what you see there is, a pretty strong association. Obviously, this does not prove cause and effect, but it's a very strong association. And later, I added Japan to this because Japan has one of the highest life expectancies and one of the lowest rates of certain chronic diseases. And I had to estimate the ergothioneine consumption in Japan myself, and you can see it kind of fits the curve. Next slide. So we also looked at 2 chronic diseases, neurological diseases. And most of the work that's been done has been in looking at on neurological diseases. And so I looked at Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and you can see a negative association there in both cases, and Japan sort of fits the curve. So when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is really interesting, because is this a potential cause of why we have such chronic diseases in the United States, for example, and so many neurological diseases? So next slide. Well, there's a group in Singapore, Barry Hallowell and his group in Singapore, that's been studying this for a long time. And for example, they discovered that as people age, the amount of ergothioneine in their blood decreases, but it decreases faster in people that have various chronological diseases or diseases of aging. You see age-related macular degeneration, Parkinson's disease, mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's disease, and vascular dementia. So they had 544 people that they took their blood and measured it, and these were all healthy people. And then they had 354 people that had one of these chronic conditions, and they measured the ergothioneine in their plasma, and you see the graph here. And you can see there's a definite increase in the amount of ergothioneine in the plasma of healthy individuals. And actually there's 15 people that went off the graph there. They weren't able to fit them on the graph. So they came to the conclusion that at this level of 800 millimolar, nanomolar, I guess it was, in the plasma would be the cutoff. And so they're continuing to do this work to see whether this holds up. Well, there was a very interesting study that came out a year or two ago, and it was done in Sweden, where they 3,236 people that were all eating a healthy diet, according to the study. And they followed these people for 21 years. And this was a metabolomic study where they were looking at 112 metabolites in the blood of all these individuals, looking to see if there was an association with, in this case, heart disease, because this was a group that was studying coronary heart disease, but they also looked at mortality. And what you see on the slide there on the right is after doing a study on which compounds actually have a positive association with lack of heart disease or longevity, the only things above the line there were things that had a positive association. And much to their surprise, the one that was the very best was ergothioneine. And they were not looking for it. They were not looking for it. For you now.
Okay, so I'm taking over here. It's been really interesting to see the association of higher ergothioneine intake and lower risk of chronic diseases, especially that related to aging. And so there's plenty of preclinical evidence to support that ergothioneine protects against multiple hallmarks of aging, including preventing telomeres from shortening. This is a trial that Blue California had sponsored. Also, ergothioneine is able to protect against DNA damage, modulate epigenetic enzymes such as the sirtuins, support cellular health, protect against cellular senescence, and also combat inflammation. So we found that this study originated from Japan, published just a few months ago. It's very interesting that they found that ergothioneine was able to dramatically increase lifespan in mice. So researchers fed mice ergothioneine through drinking water, and they found that ergothioneine supplementation was able to increase mice lifespan from 700 days to 1,000 days, which is incredible. A lot of lifespan studies are done in simpler models, such as fruit flies, Drosophila. This one is done in mammals, so this is very supportive to the notion that ergothioneine is an important longevity vitamin, if you will. It's really an amino acid for longevity. Here's a hot off the press study published from Harvard University. Not published, it's available as a preprint publicly. It's not yet published, just a few months ago. There has been evidence that ergothioneine may benefit exercise performance. A while ago, ergothioneine was studied in Arabian horses, but not much has been done in this sector. And this particular group found that ergothioneine accumulates in muscle mitochondria, which is the first time this is found. They also went further and found that ergothioneine bound to a protein called MPST and boosted mitochondrial respiration and exercise training performance in mice. So this is an incredible study. We look forward to its peer-reviewed publication, and we also look forward to human clinical trials to validate these preclinical findings. So this is very interesting for the application of ergothioneine in the realm of sports performance. So far, we've covered all the health benefits of ergothioneine, reviewed the literature. Now let's talk about strategies of how to boost ergothioneine in the food supply. So Bob, you've done a lot of work in terms of the interesting link between soil health and ergothioneine, which I find very interesting. Would you like to talk to the audience more about this?
Right. Well, this is a graph that was in a paper we published a few years ago in the Journal of Nutritional Science, where the title of it was, "Is ergothioneine a longevity vitamin compromised in the American food supply?" Because previous data showed that our consumption does appear to be lower, and I became concerned because a lot of people don't eat mushrooms in the U.S. especially, or very many, but they're getting it somewhere because it's located in the blood of everybody sitting in this room at quite high levels, millimolar levels, which has scientists puzzled, why is it there at such high levels? But since mushrooms are the major supply, which is sort of indicated in the graph here, but it's also found throughout the food supply, but in very low levels. And so my question was, where is it coming from? Where is it getting in there? And my hypothesis was, well, it must be coming from the fungi in the soil, getting into plants, and then animals eating the plants, and so on and so forth. And sure enough, we found that to be true. If you look at the slide here, this is depicting mycelium, and of course the mushrooms are the fruiting body of mycelium. We're not talking about ones growing in the wild, but most of the cultivated ones. But if you look at plants, they have lots of fungi in the soil that some of them are associated with the roots of plants. There's a type of mycorrhizal fungi called arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi that actually attach to the roots of plants. And there's a symbiotic relationship there. The plants are sending down photosynthates that the fungi are using for their metabolism and for their nutrition. And the fungi are reciprocating by sending materials through the roots into the plants, including moisture, water, phosphorus, and perhaps other nutrients. But we found that indeed they are supplying the plants with ergothioneine. Well, then the question became, I was sitting in my office one day and I thought, I wonder if the way we're growing our food might be messing with the fungi in the soil. And so I remember I called up a soil microbiologist on our campus and threw that point out. She said, oh, we know that to be true. And so I thought, well, this needs to be investigated. But I had no way to do it myself. At the time, I don't have a laboratory anymore, but I do have the collaborators. But I found collaborators that where we could actually study agricultural practices that are affecting the ergothioneine in the plants. And we first did experiments with tillage. Tillage or plowing of the field. And we found that the more aggressive the tillage is, the less ergothioneine that gets into the crops. And we did this with corn, soybeans, and oats. Now we've done it with wheat. And there's a direct association between the colonization of the roots, that can be measured, and the ergothioneine that gets into the crop. We don't know exactly how it's happening, but it's definitely happening. My problem is that I think there are other things that are causing this. Some of you may have heard of regenerative agriculture movement, which is trying to change conventional agriculture to be more sustainable and whatever. And the major input there is no-till or low tillage, but there's other things like cover cropping when the crop, in the wintertime, multiple crop rotations, heavy fertilization, or use of chemicals. And all of these things, lack of cover crops, lots of synthetic fertilizer, some of the chemicals all have a negative impact on the fungi in the soil. So my theory is they're also affecting the amount of ergothioneine getting into the food supply. And we would love to pursue that further as time goes on.
Okay, thank you, Bob. It is very important to think about enhancing soil nutrition to boost the nutritional contents in crops. So this will make assessing nutrients like ergothioneine more accessible to consumers in whole foods. Another strategy to boost ergothioneine in food and beverages is to enrich or fortify ergothioneine directly in functional food and beverages. This is what Blue California specializes in their flagship ingredient, ErgoActive Ergothioneine. And we were one of the first companies to commercialize this ingredient and achieve FDA-notified GRAS status since 2019. And our ingredient is made by precision fermentation, and we were the first company to achieve FDA-notified GRAS through precision fermentation manufacturing means in 2019. And so this ingredient is easy to formulate. It's water soluble. It has a neutral taste and odor. And ErgoActive Ergothioneine can also be paired synergistically with any product that contains mushrooms or mushroom powders to ensure that consumers are getting enough ergothioneine in their food product. Not all mushroom containing powders or extracts are standardized to ergothioneine. They may be standardized to other bioactives such as beta-glucans. So one solution is just to pair the two ingredients to make sure that consumers are getting a more holistic package, if you will. And so in terms of dosing, for nutraceuticals, the recommended dose is up to 30 milligrams a day. If you're following ergothioneine literature, it could be 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 25 milligrams, depending on the claims or intended use. For food and beverages, it's recommended to be 5 milligrams per serving. And this may seem low, but 5 milligrams is about equivalent to an average serving of mushrooms. And also this is taking into account that consumers are getting potentially multiple servings of an ergothioneine containing product per day. And so two things that we're showcasing at the Blue California booth that contains ErgoActive Ergothioneine is number one, a longevity coffee that we're collaborating with a company called Mood Brew. A serving of Mood Brew longevity coffee delivers at least 5 milligrams of ergothioneine to support healthy longevity. This coffee is available at our booth to sample. The founder is actually hanging out there today. And it has only 45 milligrams of caffeine, so that's about equivalent to a cup of tea. But it's also infused with adaptogens and nootropics, including ergothioneine, but also lion's mane, rhodolia, L-theanine. So it gives you a nice mood and energy boost in the short term, but gives you also a nice health boost in the long term. Another prototype that we're featuring at our booth is the reduced sugar lavender lemonade. This is in collaboration with our sister company, Sweegen, that provides taste code natural flavors for taste modulation, and Sensogen bio-based floral flavors. So this lemonade has 60% sugar reduction. It uses natural flavors for taste modulation by Sweegen, and also provides a delicious lavender taste by Sensogen to provide a blissful blend of sweetness, floral notes, with added L-ergothioneine for functionality, so you could dive into delight without guilt. Very refreshing, so stop by our booth. And so the last part, I have 5 minutes here. We're having so much fun on the stage. It should be question answer time, but I want to get through this. Is Blue California recently completed a clinical trial looking at cognitive outcomes. And so this is very exciting for our company. If you've been following us, this has been going on for several years due to COVID. And I was just here in Chicago 2 weeks ago to present the clinical data at the American Society of Nutrition Conference, right here at the McCormick Convention Center, but on the other side of the building 2 weeks ago. So I'm back, and I'm excited to share with you, since you're sitting here, a preview of our clinical trial outcomes. So this is the first study to look at, there has been a lot of association studies. This is the first clinical study to look at, does ergothioneine support cognitive function, especially in healthy population? And so we looked at healthy older men and women ages 55 to 79 years of age with subjective memory complaints. 3 arms, placebo, 10 milligrams a day of ergothioneine, and 25 milligrams of ergothioneine, and they took capsules for a total of 16 weeks. So that's about 4 months. And the first thing that we found was that ErgoActive Ergothioneine supplementation resulted in a very nice increase in blood plasma ergothioneine levels, which is very important because all the association studies has been based on whether you have high or low ergothioneine levels. And we found that 10 milligrams a day of ergothioneine boosted plasma ergothioneine levels by 3-fold in 4 weeks and 6-fold in 16 weeks. So if you take more, such as 25 milligrams of ergothioneine, that boosts your plasma levels even more. We did not study 5 milligrams in this study, but that is commonly asked. There was a previous bioavailability study that looked at 1 week at 5 milligrams, and they found that 5 milligrams is able to boost your plasma ergothioneine levels by 1.5 times. So between 5 milligrams to 25 milligrams, that is more than enough to boost a really nice boost of ergothioneine levels in the blood. We also found that, to our advantage, we found that ergothioneine improved cognitive function within 4 months, which is actually very hard to achieve for an antioxidant. So we're not looking at some miracle drug here, but we found that 10 and 25 milligrams of ergothioneine was able to improve reaction time, executive functioning, complex attention, cognitive flexibility, and verbal memory. We also found that within 4 months, ergothioneine was able to improve memory and sleep quality. So here I am showing a graph that over 4 months, the light blue is placebo group, and we found that that group actually had worsening in perspective memory. And you can see that there is a very nice dose-dependent increase of the ability for ErgoActive Ergothioneine to prevent the perspective memory from getting worse. There's also literature to suggest that ergothioneine may be related to improving sleep. And we confirmed that in our clinical study. We found that ErgoActive was able to improve the subject's ability to get to sleep. So the light blue is placebo. They were, average or below average in terms of their ability to get to sleep. But there is a nice dose-dependent increase in terms of the ability of ErgoActive to improve the ability to get to sleep. And so I think this is the last slide of the clinical trial evidence. I will be around the booth to discuss more in great detail. I had presented the findings to nutrition 2 weeks ago. I'm happy to talk more. So this is very interesting. This is one of the first pioneering studies to look at this causal effect of ergothioneine in healthy subjects. So this concludes our talk. I got to stop talking. We hope that you find this molecule as interesting as we do. And we want to think about ways to boost ergothioneine in the food supply, either by getting people to eat more mushrooms or improving agricultural means to boost ergothioneine in crops and whole foods, or enriching or fortifying ergothioneine in foods for functional food and beverages, so we could enable people to live happier for a longer time through this very interesting longevity vitamin. So we'll be around. Bob will be around. I believe you have engagements a couple hours right after this talk, but you'll be back. I will make a disclaimer that Bob and I are collaborating for this talk, but he is not affiliated by any way with our company. We just have a common topic and interest. But if you stop by our booth and he's not around, we'll take your contact information and pass it directly to Bob if you would like to chat with him. And I'll be around in the next couple of days. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Let's have a big round of applause for Linda and Bob. We are at time, but I'm sure that this presentation has probably prompted a lot of questions. I want to urge you to go and visit them over the Blue California booth, which is 2071, to learn more about the company, learn more about ergothioneine and some of the topics that they've discussed today.